if you push the Russian bear to the back of a cave and then start prodding it with spears, you are going to have a very difficult and dangerous situation on your hands. In the light of the discussions that have already taken place on this with the film that you've already made, I just thought that it would be useful to add one or two comments about the issue of defence and security. I've been following this for several years with the European Select Committee, and basically the position is this, that the Articles of Association, it's called the Association Agreement, contains within it a lot of very important manoeuvres to get the Ukraine and the EU to agree on arrangements for defence and security. There are quite a lot of mentions of this. And basically, it worried me that, given the fact that there is this tension between the Ukraine and Russia, and that actually, even before the change of government, this has been a very important issue, connected also to the trade arrangements, which are also part and parcel of what's called the Eastern Partnership arrangement. And within that context, the fact that Crimea is at the very centre, and has been for centuries, of Russian defence, and the warm waters that particular part of the geographical location represents, means that for Russia the Crimea is absolutely essential. It was only given by Khrushchev to Ukraine within the framework of the Soviet Union in 1954. So these articles, these provisions in the association agreement relating to defence and security are really important. And I wrote a piece on Conservative Home on the 13th of March, before the Crimea referendum took place, indicating my concern about this, and also the fact that, for example, it was quoted in Euroactiv that a senior European diplomat at the time of the November crisis, regarding the question of the Ukrainian presidency, had actually said that if the European Union found that the Ukrainian government was not prepared to accept the terms that were being offered, then they would bring the EU would bring the Ukrainian government to its knees. Also, a man by the name of Michael Lee, who is now with the German Marshall Fund, is quoted as saying that he was one of the architects of the policy, and that he regarded this as a terrible mistake by the European Union, and went on to say, I was one of the culprits. So you've actually got some very, very significant statements which have been made, indicate that there were deep reservations about the whole of these arrangements on defence and security and the Eastern Partnership Agreement, which really weren't explained sufficiently to the public. And that's what really concerned me. And I think that, as I said in the article, if you push the Russian bear to the back of a cave and then start prodding it with spears, you are going to have a very difficult and dangerous situation on your hands. So that really encapsulates what I think about the defence and security element. Save only to say this, that about 10 days ago, in the presidency conclusions after a European Council meeting, they agreed to a final act, as it's called, and nobody's really explained that very well, and all I can say, or at all really, in statements that have been made since that took place, but what it does is to commit the whole of the European Union and all the member states to signing the entire association agreement, which at the moment is in various stages of suspension. But the ultimate question is, what does it really do? And it incorporates all the provisions relating to defence and security. And Van Rompuy said that it was going to be brought into effect soon. Now, I would say it's against the background of what is going on between the Ukraine and Russia, this could only be described as a very serious mistake. And I don't think it's statesmanlike to do that. And I also believe that because the word Ukraine in the agreement means, according to the European Union and statements made by governments, that the word Ukraine includes Crimea, that although they're saying that the first priority is to have a dialogue between the Ukraine and Russia, the moment Mr. Lavrov and his opposite number sit down round a table to discuss the dialogue that's supposed to take place, surely the first question that Mr. Lavrov is going to ask is, do you accept that the Crimea is now Russian and not Ukraine? And I also saw Hard Talk on a programme a few days ago in which the acting Prime Minister of the Ukraine said that they would never, never accept the idea that the Crimea belonged to Russia. So unless they resolve that question, there appears to me to be absolutely no prospect of any agreement between Russia and the Ukraine. And I regard that as a very, very dangerous situation, because if you don't have dialogue, we'll never remove the problem. And of course, at the same time, the Russians have got very significant troops on the borders, and there is also the question of the minority languages and the question of whether or not the Russian-speaking people in the eastern part of the Ukraine have a right to be properly protected in relation to their language rights. So at every point on the spectrum, which is extremely complicated and very difficult, the reality is that the defence and security questions and this association agreement and the final act are incredibly important. And in my judgment, there is a point at which, when you're dealing with something as delicate as this, it really is important that one accepts the fact that this has happened, because in the real world, nothing is going to get Russia to change its mind on the question of the Crimea. I think that is a fact. And what is most important is to de-escalate the issues and at the same time to make sure that both sides can get down to a serious dialogue. If it's not possible, then I'm afraid the situation is only likely to get worse rather than better.